and welcome to Managing Large-Scale SAP Systems on Microsoft Azure. I'm going to be your moderator today, Brian Snitzer, and we're going to be working through with a handful of exceptional guests some key discussions about what we can see in managing large-scale systems. So if we can bring the slides up, we want to talk through the team that we're going to be bringing through here today. We will be covering these insights with our key experts that we have. Cyrus is joining us. He is the lead for cyber resilience, and he's going to be talking about how we focus on cyber resilience in SAP systems and how we run them when we're running systems on Azure. Thomas, one of our distinguished engineers, is going to be focusing on availability in the SAP space and how we can approach that. And Matt, one of our key SAP offering architects, is going to talk to us about automation and underlying capabilities. So we're hopefully going to have a good discussion around how these features are used, how they can help your SAP systems be effectively managed, be secure, be automated, be highly resilient across our underlying systems. And I'm your moderator today, Brian Snitzer, with the SAP team as part of Kyndryl. So we'll be covering these pieces around cyber resilience, operational resilience, and automation in orchestration as we talk through how we run systems here at Kyndryl. Now, you may not have heard of Kyndryl before, but we certainly hope that you will hear of us. We are an alliance partner with Microsoft, recently announced, and we are a brand new company. We just sprang to life in November as a $19 billion, 90,000 person startup. Coming out of our history as IBM's Global Technology Services, we focus on designing and managing and modernizing the mission-critical technology systems of the world. Just for a little bit of background and understanding on why we're here and our sort of history and expertise where we come through, we're recognized by analysts as a leader across the industry. We deliver services in 6 core areas aligned to what our customers need, want, and how we help them be effective. We deliver services in cloud. We deliver services in core enterprise and Z. We work in the digital workplace and all kinds of elements. That's been really critical in the days of COVID, making sure that works effectively and that people can work and collaborate. And we're going to be talking here about 2 of these areas. One of them is application, data, and AI. Our practice around this includes our expertise in managing SAP and other ERP systems on our core cloud partners like Azure. We also have capabilities around network and edge, our network services, which we use for cloud and data center capabilities. And then our second practice that we're covering here today is around security and resiliency, where Cyrus brings us the expertise in cybersecurity, how we bring these to bear, how we help our customers to be successful when we run their systems and help you drive them. And our customers are over 4,000 customers, 75% of the Fortune 100, half of the Fortune 500. We have critical functionality that we support around the world. And it's one of the things that makes me really, really proud to be a part of Kyndryl and enjoy working here, that what we do has direct impact to the world's economy. And you hardly find more critical systems than SAP systems to drive customers' underlying business needs. So we want to talk a little bit about how to keep those protected, how to keep them secure, how to keep them up and running. We know downtime is invariably almost the most critical concern that most of our customers have when they're looking at their SAP systems. They need to be up, they need to be stable, and they need to be secure. So, Cyrus, let's start the conversation with you. I think one of the things that we've gotten questions on from time to time is how cyber resiliency is different than just traditional kinds of data protection. You think about like backup, disaster recovery, HA, but in cyber resilience, that's something different. What's different about it? How does cyber resilience work?
Thank you, Brian. I would like to pull a slide on this. To kind of help a little bit visualize.
I think we've got one here.
Thank you. When customers hear the term cyber resilience or cyber resiliency or cyber incident recovery, they immediately think, I already have that. I'm doing my backups. I even have a DR solution, or I might even have a high availability solution right there in usage today. Doesn't that protect me sufficiently from a cyber attack? And the answer is no, it doesn't. And the reason is that traditional backup, DR, and HA solutions do protect against planned and unplanned outages, but cyber has brought in a whole new dimension of possible exposures. Let me give you one example. Malware, a ransomware specifically, could hit a production workload. It could slip through the protection layer in production, and it can then sleep in the production system. Sleeping means it doesn't explode right away. It just sits there, waits for up to 278 days, which we have seen in studies. And the reason why hackers do that is because they want the malware to find its way into the backups. So all of a sudden, you're backing up bad data. So the infection, the ransomware, is already in the data and all your backups included. Then after 278 days, it explodes, ask for ransomware, and if you just want to recover, you will basically reintroduce the ransomware back into production. And that is what traditional backup DR and HA solutions do not protect you from. Specifically, HA will immediately copy the malware over to the DR site. So therefore, we have built a specific solution on Microsoft Azure, and that specific solution has 5 key technologies. So what you see on the slide on the left side, you see the production workload, and on the right side, you see a cyber recovery site. That could be your DR site. It doesn't have to be. It could be a dedicated site as well. It is typically geographically somewhere else. Could be in the same data center, but also could be in another data center. And the assumption here is that the malware hits production, and then our solution is basically used every day. So we replicate the data from the left to the right. So we take, in traditional terms, I'd say we take a backup or we do a DR from production to the cyber recovery site. Now, on the cyber recovery site, we have these, and we can call them cyber copies. So those are specific copies. They typically entail the minimal viable company or crown jewels. The term we use in the security space, which basically means this is the data that you need to get your company up and running as a bare minimum. Those are your most important workloads, like SAP. Now, on the cyber recovery side, this is where we utilize 5 functions. So first of all, we do orchestration and automation. So we have a software called resiliency orchestration. And what that does is basically, it does not only do the replication into the cyber recovery site, it also allows you to orchestrate the recovery. So in the wake of an attack, if things went bad and panic's going around and everybody wants to get mission critical systems back up into production, we have an orchestration in place that eliminates, I don't want to say eliminates, but minimizes human error. So basically, a predefined workflow kicks off and recovers the data. That is one less risk you have to take. Another technology is air gapped. So we are employing an air gap between production and the cyber recovery site. The air gap is basically there to protect the hacker who's in your production site to also get access to the cyber recovery site and do bad things with the cyber copies. So we're employing an air gap. Our solution uses a network air gap. There's different types of air gaps that are available in the industry. There's also storage array-based functions are also available here. We're using in our Azure solution network-based air gap. Now, reporting. We also provide extensive reporting to be prepared whenever data retention requirements are required. Standards like HIPAA, like like various standards in the banking industry, they do require to have an extensive reporting system to be able to say who accessed the data at what point in time, when, and what has been done to the data. We have that built in, and we then have immutable storage. We leverage immutable storage. Immutable storage basically means once we create the cyber copy, nobody, including a system administrator, can delete the data. So we basically make the data unchangeable. It sits there for a predefined time, probably 14 days, or it's obviously customizable. So immutable storage helps us to isolate the data to make sure that it's not being modified. Modification could be deletion, or it could be simple modification, that something's injected. This, by the way, also gives us protection against insider attacks. So there could be insiders who want to do harm to those cyber copies. So we use that technology, and last not least, a data verification. And data verification is essentially anomaly scanning. So we are scanning on the cyber recovery site. So we're not competing with scans of firewalls or virus scanners on the production site. We are doing it on the cyber recovery site. So in the cyber recovery site, we do a scan of the data, and we can do that daily or weekly. We can do it also every hour. It's customizable. But what we essentially do, we use AI-based, artificial intelligence-based learning algorithms to check the cyber copies for an infection. So we're not scanning production, we're scanning the cyber copies. And if we find something that's unusual, for example, if you have dedupe in place and all of a sudden after an encryption, the size of the backup is tenfold what it was the day before, we will throw an alert and we'll say, wait, something's wrong here. We have a strong indication for a malware infection. So that's the data verification part. And these 5 technologies that we employ here, those are the ones differentiating our solution from a traditional backup, DR, or HA solution. I'm not saying replace those technologies. I'm basically saying those are the functions that we need in order to protect against cyber attacks. So it is, in most cases, an add-on technology that we bring in, but in some cases we can also leverage existing, for example, backup solutions that might be in place, and we just augment them by providing this service. And it's a fully managed service by Kyndryl.
Fascinating. I really appreciate that. You know, you can hear the level of expertise that you come through, and a couple of things that you said. One of them that I thought was interesting was the emotionality of it, right? That when a cyber attack is underway, or when you've just discovered ransomware, that's just a very tense time in the life of the company, of the admins, of the team. And when you're under pressure, you know, and you're trying to do things manually, the chance for human error goes radically up, the chance for missing pieces. So the stakes are high, the tension is high, and that sense of, you know, automation coming in to make an impact, not just in making things faster and making them more consistent, but actually in removing the human error at times of tension, is a really interesting insight that I think resonates with me, at least. I know nobody wants to be in those sort of tense situations, but when you're there, anything you can do to make your life easier makes a huge difference. I also thought that your point about when you do traditional backup, you're just loading the data back in, right? You've already got the ransomware there and you move it over. Thomas, I want to bring you into the conversation kind of on a slightly different area, because when we talk about the SAP spaces, we do talk some more of those sort of traditional resiliency capabilities, HA and DR. Now, we've been moving a lot of clients into Azure from their traditional environments where they've been running their own data centers or a third-party data center. How do you see, when you look at SAP operational resiliency, does it change when you're moving into a cloud from what you had done on-prem, or how does that impact the way you look at resiliency in SAP?
Yeah, there is one huge difference comparing to on-premise, and the huge difference that I see in an area of operational resiliency, that means exclusively focusing on HA and DR topics, is in the availability zones. Now, in on-premise, typically you have multiple data centers, and it's very expensive to build a data center. So either these are your data centers or these are rented, but they are placed at certain distance. Now, what Microsoft was able to do with their data centers is they built in them from the beginning in the right distance, where you have two data centers that are forming together an availability zone. They are close to each other so that the latency is sufficiently low so that you can write in a synchronous manner. And at the same time, they are far away enough to not share any single points of failure, which is very interesting design, because together with some native functions like load balancers and blob storage and so on, these that are shared across these availability zones, so they are internally redundant. You have everything that you need to really design high availability across these two separate data centers, across these two availability zones. Now, this is very difficult to emulate in on-premise world, quite often because you don't have the data centers correctly placed, or you are simply not having the technology or the time to invest and energy invest into designing all of these functions yourself. Now, the magic proposition here is that in case that you are having certain events that were in past on-premise treated as a disaster, like for example, fire in the data center, now this can be nothing more than just a high availability event where you fail over to the second availability zone within a minute, and you almost didn't notice that there was such a brutal incident in the data center. Now, this alone, together with the replicating to a disaster recovery site, will give you a very good protection from various operational failures. Now, as part of the managed apps offering for SAP, we are, of course, supporting the availability zone concept, but we are also offering the single availability zone concept where the data centers are not in the right distance, or where the customer wants to contain the systems in a single availability zone.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I think, and that sense of being able to have the advantage of, especially when you move to Azure, all that sort of data center capacity without having had to build it yourself. As somebody who used to spend a lot of time building out data centers and designing systems to be resilient, to be protected against fires, trucks crashing into them, one-time acid dripping down from the floor above. It's really nice to have that taken care of somewhere else, and having availability zones and availability capabilities really improves our basic structure. Matt, I want to bring you into the discussion because, Cyrus talked about the things that you can do to provide resiliency in the cyberspace, and Thomas has talked about the kind of operational resiliency, but all of this demands a lot of automation and orchestration kind of capabilities to, manage the failover from one HA to another, to do all of the pieces that we're looking at to prevent there from being, chaos in the course of a recovery event like Cyrus talked about. How do you see the role of automation and orchestration playing into the space of managing SAP systems on Azure?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. It plays a huge role in being able to effectively manage systems on Azure, on-prem, anywhere, but certainly as we're discussing here on Azure. When you think about the topic of resiliency and the HA and the DR and the backups, the cyber resilience that Cyrus talked about, automation and orchestration is absolutely key in being able to effectively administer all of those scenarios. When you think about why you would do automation, it's about three things. It's about doing something more quickly, doing something more predictably, or doing something with less labor. And when we talk about resiliency, it's typically around doing things more quickly and doing things more predictably. As Cyrus mentioned, right, when there's a cyber attack going on, there's a lot of panic that goes around, and people make mistakes. If your run book is literally a physical book that you open up and you take off the shelf and you read and you do, you're going to make mistakes in some of these scenarios, whether it's a cyber attack or even just a failover scenario to DR for other purposes, as Thomas mentioned, to fire or whatever. So having these things codified in code and having them executable at the push of a button, obviously with the ability to have approvals in place and so forth, but it's that repeatability, the fact that you've tested it, you've done it before, you may do it several times a year, but having that ability to rely on your automation to do what it needs to do is really key. We've seen clients with the appropriate levels of automation and orchestration in place recover from cyber incidents up to 80% faster than they would otherwise be able to do. So in terms of getting your business back online, whether that's due to a system failure, a site failure, or ransomware, in all of these cases, really having that codified set of steps that are orchestrated and tested is really key to being able to resume your business as quick as possible.
Makes total sense. I was thinking particularly of the time when we introduced automation for the cluster failover in HA systems. And before we had the automation to manage that, we ran into a lot of human error, right? Managing SAP clusters with Pacemaker is complicated and difficult. It required a degree of expertise. And we had, a lot of teams that would try and do it manually. Once we finally introduced, the automated way to execute the failover, we had our outage time reduced, failover time was more effective, it improved things. So it really resonates, Matt, those pieces. Cyrus, I'm curious about your take on automation specific in that cyber resilience play, because it's critical to your kind of business. We talked about this in the chaos element. How do you see that orchestration automation element as being an important aspect of resilience at the cyber level?
Extremely important, and here's why. What we found is that cyber attacks are happening more frequently than ever, specifically in the wake of the pandemic. So we see more and more cyber attacks. It's not a question of if a cyber attack will occur, it's just a question of when. So every customer, from small ones to medium over to enterprise customers, will have to face cyber attacks. So we know they're more frequent, and we've also learned over the last couple of years, the last 2 years, that they keep costing more and more, meaning hackers are getting smarter on one hand, but on the other hand, it's the outage, it's the system downtime that causes increasing cost. So the longer you're down, the more cost occurs. You can imagine if an airline booking system is not online for 5 days, the airline could go bankrupt on this. So it's really about bringing your production up to speed quickly. So we're using a study, the Ponemon study, that has figured that a average outage is about $4.24 million, an average cost of a cyber attack, to be precise. A major bulk of those 4.24 million are that cost of downtime. Basically, it means it's not so much fixing the problem, it's going back online quickly. And that is exactly where automation comes in. If you can automate, and as Matt mentioned, right, we had some customers here that could actually go back into production 80% faster as if they would have not automation and orchestration in place. So automation and orchestration really reduces the cost of a cyber attack up to 80%. So you can really, instead of 4.24 million per attack, it can be lower than $1 million that one of these attacks might cost a customer. And that is really where our value proposition comes in. It's reducing the time that it takes to recover after a cyber attack. So automation and orchestration is extremely important.
That resonates so much. Every customer I talk to is worried about the downtime, and not just the money they lose too. I had a manufacturing customer that pointed out that when their systems that issue the controls that send product to the floor, that control the just-in-time inventory delivery, when that goes down, within about 2 hours, they've got to make the decision on whether they're going to send the shift home. So all those people who are working at a factory floor, assembling and manufacturing things, downtime in a system not only impacts their ability to sell orders, they actually send home a bunch of hourly workers, and then it makes it harder for them to continue to hire those workers. So downtime has this huge ripple effect through the entirety of the company, well beyond just what you're going to see in CFO or SLA impacts. It's existential to the company. So Thomas, what kind of options, and we're getting towards the end here, but when we look at getting that downtime out of the way, what are your options to make planned downtime less when you're running SAP systems in the cloud?
And that's actually a very good question, Yatsi. So as I mentioned, we are having a high availability that can be across availability zones. That is protecting us from the unplanned failure. But the same concept can be actually used to optimize the planned maintenance as well, because we have two independent operating systems with two databases or application servers. And what we can do is we can use the passive side to perform the maintenance to upgrade operating system, or in case of SAP HANA, even upgrade the database, failover, and then do the same operation on the old primary. So that's one of the several concepts that we are using to optimize the planned maintenance to ensure that the uptime is as minimal as possible.
That's great. Okay, so look, I know we're getting to the end of our time, and they will absolutely cut us off if I talk too long. So I want to just take a minute. Cyrus, Thomas, Matt, thank you guys for all your time, for your expertise, for all the value you provide to our customers. We are really eager to talk to any of our customers about how we can improve their SAP systems, how we can bring you to Azure, how we can bring you cyber resiliency, how we can help you manage your SAP systems. We have years of experience operating these systems, lots of technology, lots of capabilities. There's 90,000 of us here eager to help you move ahead. We've got a strong alliance and partnership with Microsoft, and thanks to Microsoft for the team for bringing us in here today. Please reach out to us at Kyndryl.com, understand and ask more. You can reach out to any of us on LinkedIn and Twitter. We are happy to connect with you and help your businesses be successful. Thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful day.